Women make up nearly 40% of self-employed entrepreneurs in Australia, but only a fraction of them apply for government contracts. Regionally, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum has moves afoot to increase the economic participation of women. A new issues paper recommends Australian governments put in place targets to encourage more female business owners to put in tenders for government work. For more, I spoke earlier to Yolanda Vega from the Australia Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Yolanda Vega, thanks for joining Business Today.
Thank you, Sue.
Now, your research has found that fewer than a quarter of women you surveyed actually apply for government contracts. Why is that?
There's a variety of reasons. Women wear many hats, and whilst they're running a business, they don't literally have the time to spend that much time. There's also a variety of factors involved, and women seem to not have the education to be applying for these, and it's fundamental that they do that, because currently they don't have access to markets, they don't have access to capital, and they don't have access to contracts either.
So you're actually calling for governments here to put a target in place to award a certain number of contracts to women entrepreneurs.
That's correct. The Australian Women's Chamber of Commerce issues paper is recommending that all governments across all boards look at introducing a mandate whereby a minimum of 5% of government contracts are awarded to women business owners. Now, there's approximately 40% of businesses today owned by women, so 5% is actually quite a small amount when we're talking numbers. But when we look at the $90 billion that is actually awarded to small businesses by the federal government, 5% is a small amount, but really it's quite significant, because women are not earning any income when they run a business.
And there's already these sorts of programs or targets in place for other areas such as Indigenous.
That's correct. Indigenous and disabled enterprises have targets where the government has said, you know, these are groups that need assistance. What we're saying is women also need assistance because they are economically disadvantaged. And it's not something new. You know, we haven't made this up. It's actually the government have themselves ascertained that this is necessary. Last year at the first Women's Economic Summit in San Francisco, the federal government said, yes, we will sign this declaration which states that we will give women access to capital, we will give women business owners access to markets, and we will start collecting the sex desegregated data. And that's what our recommendations are stating. We're saying please collect the data to then implement policy and programs or a mandate which will allow women to access these government contracts. It makes sense. If women are the biggest consumers, it would make sense to invest in them, to teach them how to do this, to allow them to access these contracts in order for our economy to keep going. Not even grow, just keep going.
Now, you've done another survey which found that a lot of female business owners are struggling.
Yes. I think we all know that businesses are struggling across the board in Australia. We're going through some very fundamental changes as a society, as a nation, and as a world. We're seeing retail where it's crumbling. We're seeing, you know, different industries disappearing and new ones appearing. Unfortunately, here in Australia, we're seeing, or our research indicates, that more than 50% of women that own a business are unable to obtain an income from those businesses.
How are they surviving then? Are they having to rely on their savings?
Savings, family and friends, and some of them are able to work at night while the children are sleeping, either cleaning or supporting other businesses in order to make a little bit of income to be able to pay the rent.
So has it gotten worse because the economy is slowing down?
I think there's two factors. It's gotten worse because yes, we have had a GFC and we're still suffering from that. There's been a decline in retail, but also because we've seen this massive growth within the business sector from women. So once upon a time, the majority of women in the workforce were employees. Now we're seeing that they're leaving their employer to start up their own business for a variety of reasons. Once they get into being a sole trader or a small business owner, they encounter different barriers, such as not being able to access capital, not being able to access markets and not having access to contracts. Without contracts, you can't make an income. If you don't have an income, you can't pay yourself a wage. If you can't pay yourself a wage, you can't pay yourself super. So it's not just issues that we're facing today that are problematic, it's the after effects of these issues. So realistically, what we're trying to avoid by asking the government to implement mandates is having 1 million women living below the poverty line in this, our lucky country.
Okay, Yolanda Vega, thanks for joining Business Today.
Thank you, Sue.